Happy New Year, everybody. It is 2024, of course, and we're back with a brand new episode of The Smylie Show. He's, of course, Smylie Kaufman. I'm Charlie Hulme. He is out in Hawaii covering the Century to start the year. You know what? Something we hadn't really talked about too much, but I'm curious. I keep seeing all these people on social media with the ins and outs for 2024. And I'm curious if you've made any notable New Year's resolutions or in out lists for the new year that you're looking to kind of stick to and work on as we, not to put you on the spot there too much, but what do you got for
Oh gosh. Well, first off, mahalo.
us?
As you can see, I upgraded my studio with my nice little artwork here in Hawaii. Yeah. No, happy to start the new year, ins and outs. I'm going to try to read more this year. That's one of the things I'm going to try to do. Yeah, I think that's probably like the number one thing that's in for me right now. Maybe try to be a little bit better about working out on the road and eating healthier. Yeah, a bunch of like lame mid dad stuff. You know what I'm talking about? Like this isn't. I'm not gonna just wow you away talking about. Oh, I want to jump out of a plane, or I want to go scuba diving. Yeah, I'm gonna keep it pretty nice and safe, nice and even keel. No stress dad stuff, because that for me, keeping the stress out of the day is important for the dad life. So we're gonna continue on making sure that we just keep everything nice and even keel.
It's funny because I had such a similar discussion with my wife last night, who wants us to write lists of things we're going to do this year and exchange them and hold each other accountable. And I was like, honestly, I just want to kind of do everything I did last year a little bit better, just kind of status quo. Um, she told me, like, if you put play more golf on that list, I'm going to kill you. So I'm just going to keep that one in my head.
Dude, you
But
played
that
too much
one's
golf. You played too much golf in 2023. You 100% have a problem. Like, I really think that you played a little bit too much golf last year, and there's no doubt about uh, that you had the bug, and maybe you should spend a little bit more time at home, Charlie, and play a little bit less golf.
or if I take my son out on the golf course. By the way, shout out
Oh, there
to
you go. There you go.
I think a lot of people have seen this on Instagram. The kid caddy, the little golf stroller deal, the attachment you
Yeah,
can put
yeah. You
on.
sent me a picture of that.
He sent one to me. I've been using it here in Florida. It's amazing. Everybody go check that out if you're a dad trying to like buy yourself some golf time with your significant other. You want to get your kid out on the golf course. Big fan of that attachment. I was thinking about this, and I really enjoyed being a Grinch in December, like refusing to put up Christmas decorations, kind of not helping my wife decorate the tree. And I think I'm just going to extend that into 2024. I think I'm going to be like harder to deal with this year, more of a pain in everybody's ass. Like I think that's where I want to kind of start. That's the type of energy I want to bring right off the bat into the new year. Like let's not even build up to it. Let's just come right out of the gate with that sort of vibe.
Love that.
So yeah, love that for me. Look, there a lot happened while we were gone, of course, like as is the case in golf. There, we had the deal extended, the framework deal, PGA Tour and PIF. We had OWGR point distribution changes, a whole host of different things. But one of late that kind of has been the topic du jour is Rory's appearance on the Stick to Football podcast, where he had some, I guess, interesting comments, I would say, for anyone who has been charting Rory's thoughts and public comments on LIV over the past few years. So, rather than me read these off, I'd like to just kind of play some of these clips for us to watch and react to. And I'd encourage everyone to go, like anything these days, there is a full context to everything Rory's saying. And so if you're interested in these comments, like I would go watch the interview in full. And Stick to Football podcast is on YouTube. It's hosted by three former footballers. I don't know if they're full-time hosts or not, but Gary Neville, former Manchester United player, Jamie Carragher, former Liverpool player, Roy Keane, former United player, and then Ian Wright, a former Arsenal player. So pretty cool group.
It's hard
there.
not to hear Gary Neville's name, like how you say it, not in Martin Tyler's voice.
that hits so hard for anyone who played too much FIFA in the college years.
Entirely too much FIFA, and I just picture that dark room, my house, 12. I'm supposed to be in bed, and I'm just grinding on regular season mode. And I got Martin Tyler just
Gary, no,
Dialing me in.
maybe a little Roy Keane for you too. Maybe that was a little bit after his time. Definitely Paul Scholes should have been in the mix there. But that's great. So yeah, so there was 4 of them sitting down for a chat with Roy. So the first clip we'll listen to here is maybe the one that got the most headlines. Just talking about the flaws that Rory thinks that LIV exposed in the tour.
In a way, what LIV has done, it's exposed flaws in the system of what golf has, because we're all supposed to be independent contractors and we can sort of basically pick and choose what tournaments we want to play. But I think what LIV and the Saudis have exposed is, okay, well, if you have, a tour and you're going and you're asking sponsors for millions of dollars to sponsor these events, and you're not able to guarantee those sponsors the players that are going to show up, it's very hard. I can't believe they've done so well for so long. Yeah. So it's actually exposed some flaws in the system that hopefully golf will have a look at more. Okay, well, if we're going to ask these people for so much money, we need to be able to guarantee them what they're getting. And I think that was part of the stuff that we've been trying to do for the last 2 years, to figure out, okay, how can we basically try and bring the thing back together again and learn from some of the things that have happened and some of the stuff that LIV has exposed.
And before I get your reaction to that, Smylie, there's another one that was also making headlines, just talking about the PIF's financial might. It was a headline maker. So let me play this one for you as well, and then we can react to both these clips.
Competition is good, right? It makes people, but at the same time, I think with the PGA Tour trying to compete with LIV and the Saudis' money is like completely unsustainable. They can't do that. It's not, you're never going to win a fight if you're just, money for money, because I think we've seen in all sport, like, there's no one spending like the Saudis. So how can you tilt the odds in your favor so that you can make your product better, that you can make fans want to engage more with what you're doing? I think that's how the PGA Tour can, I don't want to say win this fight, because there's negotiations going on and everyone trying to come back together, which I think would be good for golf. But it put the PGA Tour in a position where they had to spend a lot of money that maybe put them on a path that was unsustainable. And now you're seeing some sponsors are pulling out because the tour are asking for so much money, and the sponsors we can't, we
can't afford that.
We can't afford it. We can't, asking us to pay 20-25 million an event to sponsor this thing. I mean, it's, if they're not seeing the value in it and they're not seeing, okay, well, if you can guarantee me that the top 50 guys are going to come and play in my event that week, then fine. But if you can't guarantee me that, then I'm not going to give you that money.
So we saw these pull quotes floating around Twitter, screenshot on Instagram, the past couple of days. Just your thoughts or reaction to what Rory's saying there.
Well, I mean, me and you can have a general discussion about this, because it's, it is anything that Rory has said over the last year and a half, right? I mean, I think for 6 to 9 months, we're praising, Rory for taking the stand, right? Like, he was the one fighting for the PGA Tour on behalf of the players, and he was playing some dang good golf while he was doing it. So he was just the balancing act that he was pulling off last year, playing. It's just such incredible golf. Not last year, I guess that would have been the prior year. I don't know. It's been going on for a while.
Well, it's kind of 2 years extended. Yeah. I mean, and he's still won tournaments in there. So I see your point. It's actually, I think the people that have critiqued his form failed to look at the burden that he carried in that span of time.
Well, I think just the general timeline, just what you refer to, that you can kind of see where he kind of hit the brakes of like, okay, it's just too much for me. Because I mean, I remember walking down the fairways with him in Canada the week after it went down, and so he just looked like a ghost of himself. Just totally, he looked so shocked at what happened. He just was so surprised of it all. And I had heard rumors he had left the board at that point, and that wasn't out yet. And he left the board however many months later. So he did stick it out for a little longer, but at that point I did hear that he said, you know what, I'm done with this. Like, this I'm out. And that eventually he eventually did get to that tipping point where he eventually did leave the board. and Jordan stepped in. So all that to say, it's really hard to play golf and to balance, these high level negotiations that these players are having to deal with now. I feel terrible for Jordan. I feel terrible for Charlie Hoffman, everybody on the board, because they're not equipped to handle these high business conversations, and Cantley, I guess, is another. I mean, you may think you're really smart, but really, I mean, the job for them as members of the board was to obviously put themselves in the best position as the players, representing the players for the PGA Tour, so that they felt like they were getting the right representation and that the tour would be, correctly moving forward in the eyes of the way the players wanted it to move. And as we get into that direction now, you start to wonder, it's like there's a missing piece here for the tour players. They need a team captain for them, somebody that is very business savvy, that does this for a living. For instance, they should have gone and hired somebody a long time ago to represent them in these negotiations and then report back to them, because it's so hard for these players. They have a ton of say in what's going to happen with the tour. Maybe that's why they're so heavily involved, is that they're reshaping the way this is going to go and getting the seats correct to where they have more power.
I think the point you make about the guys on that policy board is such a good one. And it didn't really even hit me like this until I heard something on PGA Tour radio this week. Charlie Hoffman was on with Gravy and the Sleaze, and he was just talking about how it was difficult on his golf game, obviously, because of the time constraint of doing those meetings, right? But even when he would go to the course to get his work in, he's on the range and everyone wants to come up to him and get an update on what's going on.
Yeah.
And so it's like, even when you have less time to do your work, and even when you show up to do your work, there are additional, burdens being placed on you to gather information so players are informed. So, that whole thing is I can't imagine what a burden that was. And specific to Rory, I mean, you could go back and listen to the first podcast we did reacting to this framework deal. And one of the first things we said was, golly, I mean, I can't imagine what mental state Rory is in at that point. He's got to be livid, because he's been basically asked in a lot of ways to be the poster child for the PGA Tour and kind of trotting out all the points, defending the tour and saying LIV's something that we're never going to do. And then all of a sudden there's this 180 of sorts saying this is someone we're going to partner with. I thought the interesting thing, even in those ensuing months, and maybe this was because of the language that was included in that initial framework deal, where it was like the LIV was going to fold into the PGA Tour, that Jay Monahan was going to oversee LIV. He would have the authority to potentially disband LIV, that Rory was maybe looking at that and saying, we're doing this on the PGA Tour's terms rather than LIV's terms. Well, of course, even that has changed in the last few months, especially with the John Rahm, a huge piece of leverage shifting over to the PIF side and to LIV. So to me, a lot of these comments struck me as Rory kind of trying to pave a way back, that pending the outcome of this deal, LIV could continue to exist, and it may be a thing that he might, want to or have to play in to fill out a full calendar, playing calendar each year. On that topic, I thought it was interesting because Jamie Carragher asked him something of that ilk, and let's listen to his response about, whether or not he'd want to play LIV if that was an option that was presented going forward.
If they do come together, why would you not then be part of LIV?
So I think
and get the sort of like the finances that these other players are getting, which is astronomical.
Well, I think you would in the end, because if LIV are, so the thing that I've come to realize is, okay, if you've got people or a sovereign wealth fund wanting to spend money in your sport, ultimately that's a good thing, but you just want to maybe get them to spend it the right way and to spend it on things that are important in the game. So instead of giving someone $100 million, why don't you put $50 million into a grassroots program for the RNA or the USGA, so that you can actually help whenever they say growing the game, spending that money elsewhere to actually grow the game and not just try to buy talent, I think would be a way better way to spend that money.
So This one was interesting to me because I think, to be fair to Rory, he's been consistent throughout about, if we can get this money into the game in a way that works for us and that, plays within the current ecosystem of golf, we should try to do that because it's a lot of money. It can help us in a lot of ways. What struck me there was him effectively saying to Jamie Carragher, yeah, like, if this comes together, I would play LIV Golf. I'm wondering how that hits you, or if you felt similarly in hearing his answer.
Yeah, and there's definitely some
Shoot.
quotes that he had in the past.
You dropped. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to stop you before you got too far in, but you can just do a pickup
okay.
wherever you want to on that prompt.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's definitely some quotes that he had in the past about LIV Golf, and say if it was the last place in the world that he could play professional golf, he wouldn't do it. So the problem that we're dealing with Rory is that he made these very on the edge statements about how much he disdains LIV Golf. That's really tough to come back from. So I think there's been a lot of players that have, made some really tough statements. John Rahm had a little bit of backtracking, but not nearly as much as Rory when it comes to LIV Golf and how much he really hates it, and I think players have made comments about the greed and the players taking the money. And I think more so they were more frustrated about the players talking about how they're, growing the game. But really it's just, the money that they were after. So I think that was one of the things that, like, Shane Lowry mentioned, saying it's just kind of ridiculous how you could take all the money and then say that, hey, this is why we're doing this, why we're growing the game. So that kind of circles back to what Rory just talked about with, I mean, it would be awesome if all the money that the Saudis have would help and grow the game. I hate that term, but yes, I mean, if it was spent properly, great. That would be amazing. But it in itself, I think when these quotes came out, kind of similar to when LIV Golf and the PGA Tour had the random merger thing that came up on TV that one day, that were just like, this can't be real. So I had the same feeling when I read these quotes on Twitter earlier this week with Rory's quotes about LIV Golf, and you're just like, what happened? How did we get here? Because I never would have imagined that he would ever come towards the middle in all this, and he's been slowly working his way back there, and just I was really surprised that he supported John Rahm's decision. Maybe he's hearing things that I'm not, but to me, Phil Mickelson kind of chimed in a little bit as well, even last week, talking about how, the golf fan, I think the tweet was in regards to how the golf fan has been the one who's lost the most in all of this. And Phil said, just give it time. We'll all be back playing together once again. And maybe Rory's upset that Rahm made the decision and he took the money, and he's like, man, I probably could have took the money and really turned this thing upside down and still been able to double dip. But listen, I just don't see how still that these two are going to be able to merge. And I know there's still going to be some issues with the merger and all the monopoly type stuff that we don't have no idea how any of that stuff works. We're gonna have to get another antitrust lawyer on to explain it all. But to me, I think there's players that make a case that they had lit offers that they didn't take. There's plenty of players that did. Like, how are you going to be able to make this fair? And it seems like this new company that the PGA Tour Enterprises, giving these players equity in the PGA Tour seems to be what's going to tip this thing, because the value in having equity in the PGA Tour, that's, the value of what seems to be a multi-billion dollar company is, that seems to be, have a lot of money involved, especially for some of these players like Tiger Woods and Rory that are going to have higher equities than a lot of the other PGA Tour players. But as we kind of, look to see what 2025 looks like, and all the different issues that we're dealing with right now, and you hope to see these players back playing together, but still there's still a lot to figure out and how the two sides are going to marry and mesh back into playing all on the same golf course again.
And kind of to some of those points, I think that Rory, and again, you should go check out the full podcast. The section really from like 7 minutes, like 14 or 15 minutes, hits on all the LIV stuff. And, Rory is complimentary of Jon Rahm's business savvy for kind of picking this time, but also kind of says, yeah, we're feeling like we're getting close on a deal. And I don't think Rory says these things the way he said them. This has been such a embittered, passionate sort of, you call it a feud in some ways on both sides, but really has been contentious in a lot of ways for a number of months and years. And so to hear Rory say what he said, I was as shocked as you were, saying, could this really be him? Two quotes that I saw from the LIV side of things that would also indicate that we might be getting closer to some form of resolution on that side, because it's obviously been, you could call it a feud of sorts the last few months and years, really, from both sides taking shots. And two guys who've not been shy about that are Phil Mickelson and Greg Norman. I want to read you two things they said in response to Rory's comments on Twitter. So here's Phil. He says, he's quote tweeting the excerpt that Rory talking about LIV exposing the flaws in the system of golf right now. He says, this quote and the many others made today by Rory probably weren't easy to say. Let's not use this as an opportunity to pile on. Rather, it's time for me and others to let go of our hostilities and work towards a positive future. Rahm's signing is turning into a bridge to bring both sides together, as evidenced by the many comments today and a month ago about changing the rules for the Ryder Cup so Jon and others can play. So let's use it as such. Until an agreement is reached, it will be business as usual for both sides, but hopefully without the needless disdain. So that's from Phil Mickelson, who's not been shy about taking shots at the tour on Twitter. And then this is Greg Norman on
That's the nicest he's been in a while, right?
A long while.
What a kind message,
a little morsel from Phil. He's like, that maybe that's his New Year's resolution. Well, and to continue this, so here's Greg Norman on LIV's Fairway to Heaven podcast. It's his reaction to Rory's comments. Happy New Year, golf. That's my reaction. I've got to be honest with you. I'm very appreciative of what Rory said. It's been a painful couple of years. What we have done is be consistent. Our narrative has been consistent. Our delivering mechanism has been consistent. The reason I say I appreciate Rory to fall on his sword to some degree is the fact that he did judge us by not knowing the facts. He judged us on other people's thoughts and opinions. We wanted to sit down from day one with them to completely make them understand the value of the LIV footprint, business model, and impact it has and can make on the game of golf. I say, hey, thank you, Rory. We all knew it was going to work within the golf ecosystem. We all want to be there. We are going to be there. To me, this is a significant turning point for everybody. I mean, his takes a few jabs at Rory in there, but I mean, from Phil and Norman, this is obviously the nicest we've heard them in months. And coupled with Rory's comments, it feels like we're getting close to something.
Well, I still, this goes all the way back to the beginning. And the beginning was they didn't take the meeting. If they would have taken the meeting and had, the PGA Tour was right for the taking. They're independent contractors, and they thought the PGA Tour would stand alone, and all the players would be happy to carry the flag of the legacy of what it means to play on the PGA Tour and to be a legend in the game. People quickly realized that wasn't the case. If you start throwing some crazy millions of dollars at players, they're like, you know what? I can work for less. I can play. You could still play the majors for the most part for some of the guys. Other players were taking risk, but still the amount of money and you could argue that some of them, even if they played well on the PGA Tour, wouldn't have matched what they would have made in these LIV Golf contracts. And still, even what these players are making per year on the LIV Golf Tour is ridiculous. So as we kind of look at this now, that what you just talked about with Phil and just a potential merger as we get closer, it's sad that I think what annoyed the golf viewer was that nobody really cared about the LIV Golf Tour. And I thought the article that Dylan wrote the other day on golf.com talking about how, the PGA Tour has always been great about, you can be a young player and you can become a superstar. The LIV Golf Tour is not that way. They haven't produced any superstars. And the model itself, I'm just tired of hearing about how LIV Golf is going to change the game. Well, maybe what they've done is they've just changed the way how the PGA Tour and the golf ecosystem is going to operate moving forward. And if that creates a better product for us moving forward, then great. But the last 2 years of listening to how team golf is going to change the way that the golf world is going to exist, I just have a hard time believing. I think it's always going to be in an exhibition format with something to keep an eye on. It's not something that you live and die on of this team is going to win a championship. I just don't think people will ever care enough about the team concept. Do I think it can exist? Sure. But I don't think I still think 72 holes in championships at places where Jack Nicklaus has won and Arnold Palmer and the legends of the game, the stuff that we thought would keep players there, that to me is what's going to eventually be the king of what holds golf together, which is, winning at iconic venues, that we have on the PGA Tour. So getting those players to eventually come back, great. They've just got to figure out how they're going to do it with the private equity that now is going to be involved, and maybe the PIF will be involved too as a minority investor as well. So wow, I mean it's a mess. We could talk about this all day, but to me it's I still think in a best world that we live in, it's like Rory talked about earlier, can we get all of the top tour players from the LIV and the PGA Tour playing at the same time 8 to 10 times a year plus the majors? Great, perfect, let's do that. And then team golf in the fall. Great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I mean, when I think about this, and I could easily be proved wrong on this point, but the LIV feels a lot to me, maybe not in terms of the profile of the player, but the original XFL. Obviously the original XFL did not have NFL caliber players, but what it came in was, we're going to do different rules and nicknames on the back of the jerseys and a different colored football. And we're going to,
it's the same.
The NFL blitzification of football, and it was cool and kind of caught people's, intrigue and interest early on. And then after a while, it's like, this product just isn't as compelling as NFL football, so we're not going to watch this. But what happened was the NFL borrowed a lot of things from that original iteration of the XFL that had a ton of staying power in the league for years to come, and are still a part of the NFL's product. And I think that, to give LIV a little bit of credit, they have forced some of that change. Now, the thing that I still want to see is, it feels like the most change they forced is in player compensation, and hey, we're spending a ton of money on this, so we're driving up what you have to spend on your players to keep them on the PGA Tour, so they don't come over here. What I'd love to see is, how does this trickle down into fan enjoyment, and really kind of rewarding the people who are watching the sport and who are, because I think the two, and we'll get into this a little bit later in the episode, but just, the sponsors and the fans right now are kind of taking it on the chin. And I know people don't want to hear about these big corporations, these big sponsors, but I mean, if they're doing this to be charitable and now they're saying we can't do that anymore because the margins are shrinking, that's a huge problem. So, like I said, we'll come back to that later. I just want one other reaction I want to get on the cards is some things never change. Brooks Koepka tweeted the GIF of Kermit sipping tea in response.
I love Kermit GIFs, so that always
plays. It's good. It's on brand, and that is Brooks Koepka for you. So before we kind of come back to, you and I have talked off air, just sketching out like, what does the tour look like going forward in 2025? Whether it's with or without a LIV component, and we'll discuss that later in the episode. But now, like, look, we're finally here. We have a new tour season. We have real legitimate golf being played, and to kind of kick off the year, I think we wanted to run through what's going to happen on the golf course this year and make some kind of predictions and storylines we're going to be paying attention to, and guys on the rise. And so with that said, I feel like the first place to start is talking about some major winning predictions in 2024. And obviously the first major on the cards is first week of April, the Masters. So I'll just kick it over to you here, Smylie. What are you thinking? What are you predicting is going to happen in Augusta, Georgia here in a few months?
I think Scotty Scheffler is going to get his second green jacket.
Okay. I like that.
I say Scotty because I think he's going to be contending in all four of the majors. That's just, I would be surprised to not see him near the top of the leaderboard in every single one of them, similar to what we saw with Brooks Koepka for that long span of it felt like 4 to 5 years where every time you looked at the leaderboard, even on Thursday in the morning or the afternoon, whenever he teed off, his name was in the little mini leaderboard split on the bottom right corner of the screen. And that is what we're going to see. Yeah, I think the thing with Scotty, I mean, I just don't see this train stopping. I think like we saw with Brooks Koepka, just the bottom right corner of that leaderboard for every single major, he was in the top 5 every single time you looked, but we saw Brooks there. And that's what I expect to see with Scotty Scheffler for many years to come. I mean, at least 3 or 4 years. I just feel like he's in prime peak mode of, I mean, we saw the consistency the last couple of years, and now he's got this added this putting that I think is going to continue to improve, right? And that's all we talked about. If he can just be average to a little better than average, he's going to win tournaments by multiple shots. So I think Scotty could be a 2-time major champion this year. I don't think it's too bold to say, but yeah. And what say you on your major champions?
Well, I gotta say on the Scotty piece, like the limited glimpse we got into whatever the new putting was going to be looked really good for 3 of the 4 rounds. And in the 4th round, when it wasn't as good, it was because he had such a large lead that it really didn't matter as much anyway. He still got the job done and won the tournament. So look, limited field, but best players in the world, first time out was something that's like he's only had more time to keep working on it. And if the putting is above average this year and the ball striking stays where it was last year, like it's a wrap. I mean, two might be conservative in terms of major predictions. I'm gonna zag a little bit off your predictions. Like, my heart wants to say this is the year that Rory McIlroy gets it done at Augusta, but I think I'm gonna go out there. He's plus 2,100 odds right now. I think Cam Smith. I like Cam Smith this year because I think he's played well here. Played well here for a number of years. I think the last 2 years he played well here during the COVID Masters, the Dustin Johnson Masters, and then obviously the year he was kind of chasing Scotty Scheffler down the stretch and then hit a ball in the water and kind of collapsed there on Sunday. Last year showed up and kind of said, I haven't really been working as hard this offseason as maybe I should have. I think he,
I wonder why.
Can anyone point to a few reasons or maybe 100 million reasons as to why he might not have been working as hard? I don't know. Someone's gonna have to chime in the comments. But I think that and then it seemed like he had a pretty solid season. Played well at some majors, and then had that like epic collapse at the Australian PGA, and that's the last taste that was left in his mouth of professional golf this season. And I just feel like maybe that kind of kicks him into gear a little bit of saying, you know what, I want to come out and show people that I'm still one of the best, 5-10 players in the world. And what better place to do it than at the Masters where he's played well and contended in years past and like gets it done for a first green jacket. So that's my Masters pick.
I'm here for that. I don't think I'll probably be able to give you all 4 of mine because for each major, I think I'm more looking to like give you maybe some like who's the Victor Hovland of last year, like who's the breakout star, like maybe comeback player of the year, like that. That's kind of, it's hard to predict all 4 majors, right? Like I think that's fair. You could play because I'm like, for instance, like Cam Smith, I'm not buying the stock that you're selling. Like I'm selling Cam Smith stock.
Well, if we're just doing kind of general major pool, then the 2 names that I want to throw in there then for any of them are Ludwig Aubert and Max Homa.
Yeah,
like I think this is gonna be the year of Max Homa. I think like we talked to him a couple months ago when he was like, my swing is getting more and more dialed in. He's been sharing swing video on social media, which is a surefire way to tell the guy is in love with his action right now. And I think we've talked, extensively to Ludwig, and honestly, he could fall into multiple categories here that we're going to discuss. But I think he could win a major this year. And I think so. Let's kind of go from there. Like, do you want to do a player of the year off of this, kind of talk here, or do you think that's going to be Scotty based on your first?
Yeah, I would still bet on Scotty. So that's any like best player of the world conversations is going to start and end with Scotty for me. As I look at the just the world golf ranking, like last year, Victor Hovland was the guy that was kind of making a move. Obviously had an incredible year. Wyndham Clark, a player that's now in the top 10 in the world. Who's making those jumps? Talking about a player that sticks out for me is, and we've had him on the show, and we've been buying stock for a long time, and that's for me, Minwoo Lee.
I knew.
Like,
I knew. That was
I
gonna
just
be it.
I think he's going to be a breakout star on the PGA Tour this year. I think people around the world knows who he is, but I think he's going to be more of a household name by the end of the year. I mean, he's already sitting at 33rd in the world, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him back in the, somewhere in that top 10 range at the end of the year. I think that's how good of a player that Minwoo is.
I totally agree. Like, in looking at this breakout star category that we talked about, Minwoo was an obvious one. I mean, Ludwig, you could already say is a star, and that's not news to anybody, but in a way, it's like he's kind of maybe in the middle of his breakout right now. And if he can
Right.
kind of put a stamp on some stuff he's done already at the beginning of this year, he's probably in that category. And then another guy, and it's funny if you're looking right in that sort of grouping in the official world golf rankings, another name that pops to me is Sahith Theegala. Getting his first
there you
win
go.
at Fortinet, and maybe it's kind of like he won that event, and then he wasn't on the Ryder Cup team or anything, and I don't know that he played a ton of other events in the fall. Maybe he did, and I just didn't notice. But I think that's a guy that now he's got
That's
the
a good
confidence
pick.
of that first one under the belt. Maybe he has a big year, wins a couple times on tour this year. He certainly has the game for it. So
one sneaky one I'll throw at you as well, and I wouldn't even call him a breakout guy because he's just so under the radar, but he's so good at golf. And there's two really that come to mind. One is Sepp Straka, the other is Russell Henley. I think two players that are already in a good spot. I mean, they're both right around. They're both top 25 in the world, but nobody really talks about Sepp, dude. He's 18th in the world, and dude, he's just solid, man. If you go watch him play and you go watch him swing the golf club, it's just effortless. And I think he's getting more and more confident. I think the experience at the Ryder Cup is going to be important for him because he's a guy that could pick off a major championship because he has the game to do it. Hits a lot of fairways, hits a lot of greens, is a streaky, putter at times. But really, I mean, you catch Sepp when he's hot, he's going to be tough to beat. And he's a guy that I would say look out at major championships this year because I think he could pick one off.
I keep banging the drum of bad nicknames, calling him the microwave because the man gets so hot when he gets hot. I know he's the ox, but in my small little heart, he's a microwave.
Yeah.
So do you care to throw a little rookie of the year pick at us? I've been looking for like a sheet of rookies, and it's kind of tough to tell who's going to play well. But who do you like in that department?
Jake Knapp.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a top 50 player in the world by the end of the year.
Wow.
Yeah,
and why?
This kid's a stud. I mean, just absolute stud. Came out of UCLA. He's got tons of speed. I mean, just effortless club speed at 120 plus. I mean, the guy absolutely hammers it. He never missed really a cut on the Korn Ferry Tour. Took him a while to kind of get going in professional golf, but I think he's got all the talent in the world. And I really do think he's going to be like one of those players early in the year that plays his way in the swing five. We're going to see him at signature events. I'm telling you, I think he's going to be a breakout star. He's my pick.
And he's not exactly in the mold of Eric Cole, but he's trending more in that direction than some of the younger guys because he's 29. So maybe kind of
he's a modern. He's got the modern game. He's a little older, but I think a little more seasoned. He's been around professional golf for quite some time. He's just got a great golf swing. I really haven't seen him play a ton besides just watching his career, and I just know that he's got a ton of talent, just hasn't broken out yet.
Mine is like somewhat of a front runner pick, but every time I've seen this guy play, I'm like, this guy's going to be so good when he starts on the PGA Tour, and that's Adrian Demont Deschessart. Played really well on the Korn Ferry Tour this last year and graduated. When he he's at Illinois in college, played really well there every time I saw him play. And so I think it's, again, a lot of people are on that train already. But that's a guy where I feel like, now he's going to get some tour starts and especially in some of these fields where you're having the opportunity to play your way into that next 10 swing 5 sort of category. He's a guy that stands out to me that could play really well this year. So let's kind of round things out here. Maybe one, we saw Ricky Fowler last year win at the Rocket Mortgage, obviously a comeback player of the year in a lot of people's minds. Anyone that maybe fits that mold this year for you?
Yeah, it's got to be Justin Thomas, right? JT's the obvious pick here as a player that didn't have a good year, like his worst year on the PGA Tour, but we've seen 3 straight top 5s from him. He's already started the comeback for him. So I'm picking Justin. I think he could play his way back into the top 10 in the world. And I do think he's going to win on the PGA Tour this year, whether it's a signature event. But I do think he's going to find his way contending in a major championship as well. He's just too talented of a player, and I think he's gotten over the hump of what he's working on in his golf swing and his putting. I just think there's finally some ownership there that, it's you've seen it. Every player's gone through it. Scotty Scheffler's eventually going to go through a slump, and Justin's been through his, and I think he's finally coming out on the other side of it. So I'm gonna take JT.
I'm gonna give you a buy stock now for this comeback player, and then I'm gonna give you a buy futures for this player comeback. Okay, so I'm gonna give you the futures pick first, which is I think that whenever this whole PIF PGA Tour situation gets worked out and there's a reformatted schedule and maybe some of it's international and maybe it's a lighter schedule for guys who choose to go that route, I think Adam Scott's going to have like a career renaissance. Like, I just think that was something where when we were hearing all the rumors around Adam, none of them were money related. They were all, hey, I want to cut down my schedule and spend more time with my family and potentially play more internationally. So I think that if you all of a sudden cater something to a guy's preferences in a way that gives him a chance to pick what he wants to play and try to really play well in those events, I think we could see a real kind of bounce back year of sorts for Adam, who it's not like he's played really poorly the last couple of years, but has just kind of slowly been moving down the world ranking list as he's been getting older and playing, and having to play more to play his way back into some of these ecosystems. So that's my futures pick. My buy stock now is Maverick McNeely. I think he went through some really wonky medical stuff, and he's now on a major medical exemption. And I know he's fallen a ways down the world rankings as a result of that. But in hearing him talk, and he made some starts in the fall, I believe, but was kind of trying to kind of delay things and work things out so he could do it in a way where he wouldn't lose the medical exemption. I think that this guy, when he's healthy, is one of the best putters in the world. I think Mav, this is all contingent on him getting back to where he wants to be. But I think Maverick could have a nice little comeback year. Maybe not like a JT size comeback year, but kind of working his way up into that top 70. So.
Mine's just going from 26th in the world to 10th in the world.
Yeah, I was gonna say. It's we're loosely defining comeback here.
Buy stock guys too. I kind of like that little segment we kind of worked through there. I like that. Buy stock and Alex Fitzpatrick.
Oh, we're buying stock now or buying futures in Alex? I think maybe buy stock now in Alex.
Definitely futures, but I definitely, if you want to buy some stock now too, I like that. Yeah.
I'm quickly realizing why we're going to have to workshop this buy stock segment a little bit more, because neither of us are stock guys. So I'm not really sure what terms I should be using. Bull market, bear market. We'll get back to some people who know those things and then define the segment better. And then boom, we're going to have a fully baked segment coming soon on the Smylie Show. So look forward to that. Couple more things just to kind of close us out. Noted this off the top. 2025, I think you and I have had some talks about just what does that look like going forward. And I want to just kind of give the floor to you to talk about some things you feel like are going to be important for the tour in that next evolution of like, hey, they need to get this thing right, or this might not go so well going forward. So what are some like important things, this year to kind of get nailed down as we move forward as a tour?
Well, we kind of already touched on all the stuff earlier, just with the Fenway group and the PIF, and let's just say all those things hold to be true and that they're going to be a part of the PGA Tour moving forward, because I think that's step one. You have to take care of the money, because that itself then gives you opportunities to then create something that's going to be completely new and make the fans and players excited about a new product. Because I think the worst thing that could happen next year in 2025 is if they roll out the exact same schedule that we had in 2024. And I think there really needs to be some changes in eligibility for a PGA Tour card, how many tour cards are given out. And it's going to piss a ton of people off, because really what needs to happen, you need to shrink this elite PGA Tour series, and you need to have, I mean, we've always kind of had these different levels on the PGA Tour of, it's like the platinum tour, then you have the silver tour, and then the bronze tour. We've always had that on the PGA Tour, and they really need to make it to where exactly what we were talking about with Rory earlier, or what he was saying. It's that you can guarantee sponsors that, hey, this is the PGA Tour Elite Series, and they're playing all of these events. And then you have, I wouldn't call it the minor league tour, but like this is, like you're not expected to see these players playing these events that are below that. And maybe you could have a team concept with this elite PGA Tour series, because I think that is where I feel like the fans would be most heavily invested. The players are definitely going to show up. It's where all the sponsors are going to be pouring their money into these events, and we already know that there's going to be some money being backed potentially from a minority investment into the public, into the NewCo. But I really think that that's one of the things that stands out to me. I'm not sure about you as 2025 approaches, but to me, the PGA Tour has been working towards 2025. But right now, that the focus is on securing the money, and then from there, it's figuring out, all right, what's the next step? And I think that next step needs to be some pretty serious changes as far as what the schedule and how the tour is going to operate from a FedEx Cup point standpoint, and just eligibility is the amount of players that are going to be on that Elite Series tour, which is I'm using that Elite Series as just my own name for the tour.
Yeah, no. Well, I think the point you're making is a good one and a fair one of like, you're not going to be able to make everyone happy in whatever the new ecosystem is going to be. And in the same way that the way you're saying you're going to have to shrink the number of tour cards, my mind immediately goes to, but also make sure we're creating pathways for the Ludwig Auberts of the world, rare as they may be, but keeping those guys happy. And I guess theoretically the ecosystem you're talking about includes LIV, so you're not afraid of leaving those guys behind and then worrying about them going somewhere else to play. We're all kind of have this big thing together. But yeah, if those things, if those two tours join up, it's going to be tricky to kind of keep everybody happy, and you really will not be able to. I think
isn't that crazy? Real quick,
this, obviously and fairly from a player standpoint in a lot of ways of looking at the number of cards and the way the tour is going to be formatted, the schedule, and I think that that's all very valuable insight. I think I kind of look at this from the fan standpoint and how is this all, how are we going to make this all work so this is a compelling product again? And I think a lot of players, and I appreciate it, have voiced those same concerns. Mackenzie Hughes had a long sort of answer about this week, at the Century, just of how the fans are kind of getting left behind in a lot of this, and him voicing, thoughts on behalf of himself and also a lot of other players where they're like, hey, we're not all kind of wired this way. So I wonder how all this shakes out going forward to both, create something where everybody's getting the money that they want, in terms of players, but also, that creates a compelling product and a product that people want to tune into. And I think that, some of this it's going to come down to players, saying, look, you kind of can't have your cake and eat it too. Like if you want to get paid a ton of money and we're going to do, a team concept in the fall, you told us a couple of years ago you didn't want to play the fall because you want to time off, but now it's like we're going to need to do these things so that we can have a sponsor pay for it and have a television network pay for it so that we can get that money and put it back into your pockets. And so I think those are going to be the tricky things to iron out, where I think even the players that should be the happiest might not be fully happy because it's like you're making more money, but at what cost? And so there's just so much to iron out and so much to figure out. And I just hope that what happens isn't that sponsors who are trying to do charitable things through the tour and have been trying to do that in the past get sort of run off, and you're left with, I don't know who fills that vacuum. And then, perhaps most importantly, just that the fan comes out of this feeling like whatever this new product is, it is more compelling. And it does feature all the best players in the world and the same place competing at the same time, even if some of that is in a normal tournament setting and some of that's in a team setting. So I think that's where my head's at as we look forward to 2025. But agreed on your point. We can't just roll out the ball again and say this is same old, same old.
I still would rather be on the PGA. Even let's say the players that accepted the money on the LIV Golf Tour. Let's use for example an Abraham Answer. No telling what he got paid. We don't really know. Has he played great on that tour? I don't know. Maybe I haven't haven't seen his name pop up on the top of the leaderboards a ton. But if I'm in his position, I would be concerned. And I use his name as an example just because he's kind of in that middle zone of used to be a top 50 player, has a lot of talent, and could still be playing on the PGA Tour and be a top 25 player in the world right now. We don't know. But if I'm him, and let's say we head towards some form of merger with the PGA Tour where the LIV Tour players are allowed to come back, I think what's going to happen is that the PGA Tour is going to be, in a way, probably working off sponsors exemptions to getting the LIV Golf Tour players to play. And I imagine that's going to be limited. At some point, there's got to be a cutoff because you can't have 48 players from the LIV Golf Tour. It's too many players. I think there's going to be a cutoff of maybe 8 to 10 LIV Golf players. And that'll be the guys that like Bryson, it'll be the Cam Smiths, it'll be the John Rahms, it'll be the players that, and maybe Taylor. You would think it would be Taylor, but not a guarantee, right? So I don't know. I would be a little concerned if I'm a middle ground LIV Golf Tour player that how am I getting back? Because I think where they're going to have to start is back at the beginning. I really think that the only way for them to come back and play on the PGA Tour again is starting through Q School, starting, just getting their eligibility back, because I don't see how they're just going to naturally merge with all of the LIV Golf Tour players. I think there's going to be some players that have a better position than others in all this, because I don't see how the PGA Tour players are going to be happy about 48 spots being taken up by, arguably some of the guys are past their prime. So at some point something's got to give, because there's only so many spots available at these elite series events that we might see. Let's say it's 80 spots or 70 spots. I mean, if you split 40 and 40, that's really, that somebody's getting left out there, right?
100%. It's almost like if you try to game this out, you're gonna have to create a separate category, of exemptions into certain events. Like, and I can almost see a world in which it's like you're gonna have to, there's gonna have to be like sort of a merging year that exists, at least for those guys to go back into normal tournaments, and maybe some of the tournaments look similar to co-sanctioned events with the DP World Tour, where it's like we get X number of these, spots that are promised to LIV Tour players, and then if they play well enough in those events, they accrue non-member points that can get them, special tip member type points towards making it into the normal full field PGA Tour events and potentially the signature events, so they can keep playing their way into it. But I mean, I think it gets really interesting when, in some of those negotiations, it's what's going to get rewarded more in terms of LIV advocating for their roster of players. Is it going to be name brand and value there? And a lot of guys who have the best name brand are they're going to, they're also the best players on the tour. But like, I think about guys like, and I haven't followed it closely enough to know if this is sustained over time, but like a Peter Uihlein or a Charles Howell, who I've seen their names pop up and play well on these leaderboards, like a Brandon Grace. It's like, are those guys going to get, probably not, over guys who maybe have played worse on LIV, but have a bigger, name brand or better, past PGA Tour performance. Like those guys will probably get first dibs going back into tour. I don't know. This is all just a guessing game, but I do think that folding in process gets really tricky. And then that's even before you start talking about, it's like you have the existing tour pros, PGA Tour pros, who you're talking about shrinking that card list, and you're talking about maintaining a pipeline for young guys to come in and LIV Tour guys, and you have the strategic partnership with the DP World Tour, and you're trying to get those guys in. And at a certain point, it's like there's just not enough seats to go around. So it will be very, very interesting to see how that whole thing is meshed and merged. So with all that said, this has been a long sort of 2024 preview and 2025, I guess, look ahead of sorts. You're out there in Hawaii this week. What are your thoughts on general vibes on the ground? A larger field, threesomes instead of twosomes this year, and just the way this field's composed. Any sort of thoughts on that as you head out to cover the event this week?
I think totally different vibes. I really do. I mean, threesomes it's weird here, and there's so many players. I'm so used to, you kind of see everybody in the field normally because there's only 30 or so odd players that are playing, so you kind of run into everybody. But now that there's, I don't know how many players are even playing. Is it 50, 60 players? I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a lot because I haven't seen everybody this week. And
yeah.
So threesomes odd. Even on the weekend, they're going to be in threesomes, which is I don't like threesomes on the weekend at all. They're going to be split tees. There's already guys playing right now. Like Colin Morikawa is already on the course, which is at 7:45 in the morning. I mean, I could tell you how they're playing. It's just weird to me. But it was really windy the last couple days. Like the guys have been talking about how much wind there's been, so it's been really pumping. That apparently it's supposed to be a little bit lighter and variable as the week goes on, but I don't know, it's just different. It's very weird. And one thing that I think that the PGA Tour totally airballed on this, and I was asking some questions about this in our meetings yesterday. So there's 8 signature events, and all 8 of the events besides this one have a component, when we've talked about this, that if you're top 30 in the official world golf rankings, you are eligible for the signature events, except for this one. So I went down the top 30 just to see which players were left out this week at the Century, and it was only 2, and it was Ryan Fox and Justin Thomas. And the answer I really got was about why they weren't allowing top 30 in the world to be here, like all the other 8 signature events, excluding this one. And the answer wasn't really great. It just said something about how this used to be the Tournament of Champions, and that they wanted to respect that used to be the qualification. I was like, well, that kind of went out the door when when you made it a top 50 from the FedEx Cup last year. So you've already made all these changes to the event. Why not just make it exactly like all the other signature events and keep that component in there? I'm not saying that because Justin's my friend. I think Justin is one of the stars of the game, that he should be here if it's just like all the other signature events that has the top 30 in the world component to it. So I think Ryan Fox and JT should be here. We're already playing threesomes. It's already a pretty big field. I just think that was an air ball by the PGA Tour there to not include that, because I mean, we've already added, like last year it was if you won a golf tournament on the PGA Tour and you made the Tour Championship. This year, same thing. So if you were top 30 as well as if you're in the top 50. So we added 20 extra players. What was that? Like adding 2 more guys, like just to me was like they just missed on that one.
It's like it's the Tournament of Champions, except when it's not the Tournament of Champions. Like,
no, it's called the Century this year. It's the Century.
Right, but you know what I'm saying? Like, if that's the logic they're using for this one, it's like sometimes we want it to be the Tournament of Champions, but other times it's not that. Like, I think if this is going to be, and I've heard this said, like, if this is the All-Star game instead of the Tournament of Champions, but it has stakes, that's totally fine as a concept. But like, have all the stars there and just use the same criteria. I mean, shoot, I wouldn't hate it if you had some sort of a fan component of this, of like, one guy who's not here will give you like a ballot. You can vote him into the tournament, to the All-Star tournament at the beginning of the year. I mean, but if it's arbitrary, let's make it all the way arbitrary. Like, let's send one guy.
We're already making up rules as we go. It just you know what I'm saying. It's like I just thought we're already making changes.
It's a little absurd, but I definitely see the point you're saying, which is just like, it doesn't quite, if we're following this format. And also, this is one of the ones where like the next 10 didn't get into this tournament. Like they got into the Genesis and the AT&T, but this was exempt from, like, it's just all.
Oh, so maybe that's one of the components too. That's another So maybe that's the
Right.
other change, that the next 10 guys weren't allowed to play in this one. So okay, maybe I'm a little off in that it's just 2 extra guys. There'd have been 10, so 12 extra players. At this point, you were already at a pretty high field. You might as well just kept
Right.
going.
But like some of them are in because they won. Like Ludwig is 53rd, so he's third in the next 10, but he won an event, so he's in.
Right.
It's everything's arbitrary and strange. Like, let's just make it the All-Star tournament, and let's have a fan vote. I'm starting that right now. Well, unless you have any other thoughts you want to leave us with as you head out to the course, that's about all for us this week, I think.
Yeah, no, I think only other thoughts. I mean, just driving through Lahaina. Once I got here to Hawaii, just devastating what my eyes saw. We heard so many different stories from survivors here this week that were at our compound, just telling stories about just what that day was like. And I think we're going to be touching on the story most of the week throughout the coverage. But it's such a beautiful area. Anybody that's been to Maui, and it's been to Lahaina specifically, and the people here have always been, so welcoming, so fantastic to deal with. And it's such a beautiful area, and it's a travesty what happened. And hopefully that this week we'll be able to touch on it a little bit. I know the players have different initiatives of giving back. I know Cantlay's gonna be wearing a hat. Finau is involved, and I'm sure that there's gonna be a lot of player donations as well to the community that is still recovering. I'd say probably coming into this event, there was still some conversations whether we should be here. Like, was it too soon? And I think the sentiment has been, since we've gotten here, is that the community really does. They're very happy for us to be here. So that's nice to know that I think there's still a lot of controversies with the fires in itself, but still very happy to be here. The players are really stepping up and going to be giving back to the community with whether it be monetization or, giving back just to different charities. But overall, I'm hoping the week goes great, and that the communities obviously come support and are happy that these players are out here supporting a lot of different their causes.
Yeah, and if you would like to support the PGA Tour and Century are kind of joining up in those efforts, so you can go to pgatour.com/support Maui if you want to donate money to that same cause. It's been really cool to see. Colin Morikawa had some really passionate, comments this week about just the sort of emotional toll it took on him seeing all that. And he's donated his time in a lot of different ways, and his money, and his sponsors have supported him as well this week in those relief efforts. So, again, that's pgatour.com/support Maui if you want to donate to those efforts. So that is it for us this week. We should have some good stuff coming up for you next week as well, recapping this tournament, hopefully with a special guest. So we'll see if we can kind of make that happen. But that's all for us now. Hope you enjoyed the first PGA Tour event of the 2024 season. We appreciate you watching and listening, and we will talk to you back here soon.
I've actually watched a couple of episodes of y'all earlier, and you guys have some good takes. So thanks for what you guys do.
It's cool to see what you guys are doing. And I know golf fans appreciate it, but we do too. So please keep it up.
I think you're doing a tremendous job. And I listen to this podcast. It's really cool. And